International Monetary Fund further warns of a fresh global crisis as the world faces an across-the-board slowdown. According to the IMF World Economic Outlook report, which says while recovery continues, it has weakened. The report paints a fairly bleak picture for global growth, similar to the 2009 global recession. In advanced economies, growth is 2 weeks hindered by political uncertainties, fiscal consolidation and a weak financial system. And in emerging market countries, strong growth has also begun to deteriorate further. Under the IMF's definition of recession, global gross domestic product does not necessarily have to shrink in order for the world to be in recession. Instead, the IMF defines recession as a decline in real per capita GDP, alongside weakness in other leading indicators such as industrial production, trade, capital flows and unemployment. At its annual meeting in Tokyo this week, the International Monetary Fund expressed their rising concerns for the global outlook, having lowered its July forecast, expecting the world economy to expand just 3.3% this year and 3.6% in 2013. The IMF also lowered most of its growth forecasts for GDP growth across the globe for both emerging markets and advanced economies, except in the US, where it expects growth this year 0.1% higher than previously estimated. For emerging economies, which had powered much of the global expansion in recent years, growth is hindered as domestic factors add to external constraints. In India, the IMF said growth may weaken to a decade low this year as investment stalled. For China, amongst investors' biggest concerns, growth is expected to slow to 7.8% as the government attempts to deflate a housing bubble and avoid ramping up growth through a stimulus splurge. For the Eurozone, the IMF believe economic contraction will be deeper this year and recovery weaker next year than previously forecast. The report also makes uncomfortable reading for the UK, which according to the report is heading for a 0.4% decline in growth this year, in comparison to 0.2% growth in its July forecast, the biggest downgrade to any Western country. However, even these forecasts by the IMF have been based on two political assumptions, one being further steps towards long-term integration in the Eurozone, and the other being the assumption that the US avoids the looming fiscal cliff and resolves other budget issues. Therefore, should both the US and Europe overcome their political hurdles, the prospects could be brighter. The IMF said a key issue is whether the global economy is just hitting another bout of turbulence in what was always expected to be a slow and bumpy recovery, or whether the current slowdown has a more lasting component. The answer depends on European and US policymakers. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today's Press Review, but do stay tuned to DukascopyTV for all the latest financial news and, of course, Forex updates. For the moment now, viewers, goodbye.